Today we talk about warfare, the conflicts of war-related storytelling, and anything that goes with it.
And for today's prompt, we handle what exactly is lost in the moment of the most intense possible situation. All that and more on this episode.
Stay tuned. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, or evening, or night, whatever time zone you're in. You know the drill by now. Welcome back to Your Rivers Are Wrong, the podcast. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Merle.
And I'm the other host, and my name is Dante.
Yeah. Hi, Dante.
Hi.
In this podcast, we talk about the wonderful whimsies of world building, the arts and aesthetics of setting up a setting, and telling stories born from those settings. And we're glad you're with us. And I'm glad you're with us, Dante. Hello. How are you doing?
What a warm intro. Hello. It's like someone stepping to your front porch.
Yeah.
Why, hi there.
You know.
Hey, neighbor.
Hello there. You know, what more do you want from a podcast?
I'm doing well. I'm coming off of the Thanksgiving weekend, which I understand.
Oh, yeah. American tradition.
An exclusively American holiday.
Yeah.
I was about to ask you about your Thanksgiving, but I realized maybe it's not the same.
No thanks to give in this country. How was your thing? You usually do like a big family thing, right?
Yeah, always a big meal. We got a lot of food, bit of karaoke going. Very fun stuff. Filipino Thanksgivings are always massive. Just a full table of food.
That sounds wonderful.
But there is a highlight I wanted to bring up. The highlight of my weekend, I suppose, for this week. I got to play chess with my cousin's kid. He's very young. He's 5 years old, and he's... Oh,
is he one of those prodigy kids?
He's entering one of those competitions. You know, his mom's like, this will be good for him. So I'm like, you know what? Let's play against him. And in my head, I'm like, there's no way I can lose to this kid. There's no way I'll allow myself to lose to him. And you know what? I'm like, I'm expecting good stuff because, you know, he's been doing this for like a year and he's been learning all the tricks and the foundations and stuff. I play against him. He's pretty good. He's pretty good. And I got spooked. I'm like, oh, wait a sec. I might actually lose. It came down to the wire and it got real close and he tricked me a couple times, but I eventually pulled through. And I'm like, oh my gosh, now I have to be the cool uncle who has to be better than him to keep him motivated, right? Because if he eventually beats me, it's over for me, right?
Yeah, you're probably like the sole motivator of his journey. Yeah.
I've lost my respect as an elder family member. I just gotta, so I don't know if I gotta start learning now, if I gotta start getting better. Because this is
you're
all
like in a crisis, dude. Are you
this
okay?
This is all built on the fact that like 20 minutes after he challenges my uncle. Like I'm the cousin's kid. Technically, I'm kind of his uncle, but he challenges my uncle, who's like 55, 60-ish older, and he beats my uncle. He's 5 years old. I'm like, oh no, that's me. That's me next. I gotta stay sharp.
Age is a construct, you know.
So now I don't know if it's going to be a tradition. We whip out the chessboard every time we're in the same room or meet up for a holiday or something. We got to keep them motivated. Give him that big bad at the end of the road. It's definitely not me, by the way. I'm like a side character in his arc because he's going to challenge bigger and better players, right? And enter these competitions. But you got to be the best in your family first, right? So got a little thing going now. Got a little thing going.
Sounds like a roller coaster going on. I love how the passion just fueled through you just because he was very good at it.
He was very good. And
I love how you all of a sudden like feel the desire to like
I need to
help him lift it up, you know?
Start the holiday losing to a 5-year-old in chess. It's for my own pride. It's for my, I'm not great.
I would totally
chess,
but forget about this like a day after, but you're like still fed up about it. I mean, you're fueled.
I think when I'm older, but I'm already older, right?
Yeah, you're an adult and stuff. Yeah.
I'm not the person who lets kids beat me at games. So I'm not one of those people who are like, oh yeah, just go easy on them. No, you have to give them something to aspire to.
Real deal?
Yeah, it's a real world.
Yeah, no kitty power. That's what we used to say at home.
Like no kitty power?
Don't play at like children's level. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't count, right?
It doesn't count. And they'll be like, oh, I beat you this blah, 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 blah. And like, no, you can't give them that. Because once they have it, they're not going to give it back. Anyway, yeah.
Okay, so now I feel like there's going to be like a lineup, right? So in terms of like chess chills in the family, chess skills. What happened? I said something the other way. I was like, why is this wrong in my brain?
Chess chills?
Chess. This makes it worse.
Okay, yeah.
Wait,
got to start from that first word.
Chess.
Second word.
Skills.
Okay. We got it. We got there.
God, I'm so distracted. What I was trying to say. Who is do you have like a hierarchy now in your family based on the chess skills of each family member now? Like, is there a sort of moving up the line? I mean, right?
We're not really a chess family. This is the first kid who's like doing competitions in our whole little circle, right?
Yeah.
And I think I'm one of the better players of the family, but I'm not like a pro. I don't know all the fundies. You know fundies, fundamentals. Yeah, I never learned the fundies. I never learned the fundies. I just learned from playing other people. Right?
You sound like an old farmer. What's happening?
And these
derailing.
Anyway, that was my weekend. It was great. It was wonderful. How was yours?
I love the passion. You know, I admire this kind of passion for somebody else's skills. I think that's great. More people should have it. My weekend was great. Talking about admiring other people's skills. My mom had a little concert with her a cappella choir. It was great. Hadn't visited a concert in a while, especially not from her. And it was very cute and nice. And also I've been going to like her choir because she's been with this choir for like, I don't want to say 20 years, but it's like really long.
Sure, yeah.
Maybe it is 20 years. I don't know.
It's like
at
a family
least
member at that point, yeah.
Yeah, like I've been there when I was like tiny and then I just keep going back and they just keep growing and they're like, oh, you're still around? Oh, cool.
You're still around?
It's really nice. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, like some of the other kids are like, after they're like 14, they're like, I don't want to go to a concert for my mom.
Yeah.
But me and my brother kept hanging around. So we're like the hardcore, you know, of the fandom. And it's pretty nice. So that was fun. That's all I got. I mean, less passion on this side of the ocean. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm sure you'll have a great December. We're closing in on the end of the year here. Speaking of milestones, we're closing in on our two-year mark for the Your Rivers Are Wrong podcast. Whoa. And we just passed, we talked about it last episode. We just passed 10,000 listens. 10,000 listens. That's crazy.
That's wild. Oh my God.
For the record, this is not just click off and leave, right? Every listen counted is a full minute of somebody tuning in or like staying for the full minute, which is like a big deal in the YouTube world.
Yeah, that's like the real. Yeah.
It's a real test of people like actually being entertained.
Because everybody's for like max 6 seconds content is like the norm now, kind of, right?
Yeah. So at least minimum 10,000 minutes listen to our podcast, which is a wild thing because we keep saying that.
Oh, wild. Yeah.
We were so excited when there were like 12 listeners. We're like, that's more than 10.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot.
There's so many people listening. It's great.
So thank you. If you've been here from the start, thank you for listening for so long. If you're new here, thanks for joining. It's so fun.
I'm glad we're still doing it because apparently people still like it. And that's great.
Good. So good.
Moving on. That's the way to do it. I mean, you're here for the hangout, but what you're mostly here for, let's not lie about it, it's the world building and the storytelling. We do a lot of it in here. And today, as the second episode of this new season, that sounds exciting, I'm your host, which means that I bring the topic for this week, if I'm not mistaken. So for this week, I guess my topic choice is based on just a bunch of stuff that I saw and related to each other, which is the way it usually happens, honestly, on my side. And it's a topic that I think we haven't discussed, even though it's a pretty big one and even like a kind of genre on itself. And it's the following one. I want to talk with you a little bit about war.
Okay, good.
The fun topics to start off the week.
The great topic that is absolutely
I know.
not relevant at all
when I was like,
in this day and age.
Nope.
Totally a relic of the past.
I mean, we're all at peace, right? That's how it works. That's how the world works.
Yes.
No, but in all seriousness, like I also, when I was younger, really hated this genre. I always thought that any like war related stories were so gloomy because obviously it's about war. And I never really connected with it. But then I keep seeing stories like specifically like the past week, there's been a few, but also like I guess through time, that are also really good and also war stories. And I feel like it's a genre. I feel like we should talk about it. Let's talk about what makes it an interesting thing and why people keep writing it or telling it and why it's necessary to tell, I guess. Yeah. So I guess that's where I'm starting this off.
Of course. I think when we speak of war as a topic, right, there's kind of two levels to it. There's the big overarching view of what's happening in the conflict, big picture and numbers of soldiers and sides and teams, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's what movies and books often focus on more prominently, which is the microcosm of what is happening to this small group of people or what is happening to the singular person. And we follow a life of somebody dealing with a problem much bigger than themselves, right? Something that they often, unless this is a hero's fantasy tale, often they cannot resolve on their own, which is quite a big deal. It's quite overwhelming at first to kind of take it all in that there is this scenario that the hero isn't really responsible for solving. Unless you are the chosen one or you are the prophesied, right? Who with the great power, great responsibility, yada, yada. It doesn't usually fall on one person. And to start off a story with a conflict that you don't expect the main character to fix, that's world building, I guess. Or that's just...
I mean, yeah, you're right.
That's just setting. That's just a kind of setting. The world is flawed. There are things happening that are bad. And rather than fixing it, you grapple with it. And every story has varying degrees of how much the character handles, how much the character fixes. Usually it's not the whole thing, but within their own microcosm of a world, they do their best. That's kind of a general scope of how I feel war stories play out. How about you?
Yeah, I'm already sort of connecting to the idea of not having like, there's not really a hero's journey in war, right? Like, not even talking about like storytelling or, you know, the way novels are formatted. And of course, you're going to always have a main character, but just as, you know, the sort of topic itself, like the way wars work, there's not one guy who does it all. There's never one guy. Sometimes there's one, you know, leader or, you know, there's people that are in the picture more. But in general, it's like a full nation against a full second nation. That's a very abstract thing. So the way that you already talked about like hero's journey, not one having the sole power of this makes it both in real world, I guess, and in world building terms, a very complex build up, a very complex structure of happenings, I guess, in terms of like, we're not following one guy's journey. There's not one person who can make or break this conflict. There's always going to be at least like a handful of people, if not much, much, much more, that are making decisions. Things are tactical. It's a very hard thing to do. Like there's a lot that you have to sort of take into account if you even are trying to win a battle or a conflict like that. It's both diplomatic warfare in the way of like metaphorical yes or no's or shaking of hands or gifting or creating and breaking treaties and all that stuff. That's the whole side of it. And then you have the classical old school medieval people against people physical fight of a war. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's either of them. You know, Cold War is like no one ever fights, but it's terrifying anyway. Yeah, there's a lot of versions of this. And there's no matter what kind of war story you're telling, there's always a lot of things sort of gripping into each other. It's not a simple linear thing because there's so many stakes and so many people or persons involved. And even if you are following like one single leader or one single guy trying to contact the other side or whatever his journey is or their journey is, even then, as that character, it's something so hard to do to try to grasp this thing that's so much bigger than yourself, as you were saying. Like we're talking about something like the greater good or peace for the nation, but on like a human level, on a literal sort of, I am a single guy and I'm doing this thing for the greater good. Like, what does that even mean? Like, how do you even come to terms with what that means? And that's also, where we're starting to zoom in on the personal level of this. where it's like, how much do you do just because someone's telling you to do it?
Right.
And how much do you do because you truly believe that it will change something? And everyone has such a limited view on things that in order to sort of oversee it all, it's almost impossible, if not impossible, to even do that.
Right.
And then we're not even talking about morals, right?
Yeah,
like, it's so complex.
Let's hit
There's
a couple
so many
of these
things
topics.
happening. Sure.
I think we can start with what you just brought up, which is motivations to begin, right? Like what pushes characters into this state of war. This is really relevant because I just watched for the first time the Dune movie, which was visually fantastic and actually so fun in terms of like a world that I've never seen before. And I see how I'm learning only in post that it's basically the blueprint of what Star Wars eventually became, because a lot of influences were taken to make Star Wars. And
did you go into it blind, or did you have a lot of background? Did you read the novels or nothing?
Totally blind. Never read it. So
okay.
So
great.
It was very fun. And I think the thing that stuck out to me was that the Atreides family didn't want to fight, didn't want to get involved in any of this. And the reason that this conflict kind of emerged within their family and within their household to the greater world was self-preservation, right? To survive in this world, you have to kind of pledge allegiance to this higher power. And by doing that, you have to play whatever game they're playing. You have to be involved for the sake of your family, for the sake of your house, for the sake of like...
Yeah, you have to be on their side, kind of.
Keeping what you already have. You have to, what they did, they moved to an entirely different planet. They gave up everything just so they wouldn't lose the support or the backing of the greater authority. And then suddenly that's this whole other chess game that they did not want to be involved in. That's this whole other situation. And there's all these pieces moving around, all these players in the game. And like the main character and his father were straight up like, we just want to chill. We don't want to do this nonsense. Like we want to what? Get spice and live normally. Like it's just like a very simple motivation. But you'll find that all of these people who often get involved in war are reluctant. Not everybody is a warmonger or a conqueror or a brilliant military strategist. These people are quote unquote playing the game because they have something to protect, because they have something that they're trying to keep sacred and safe. And war, unfortunately, is the only way to push that authority and keep your presence in this world, so to speak, which is unfortunate, but a reality in both literary media and in real life experience.
Yeah.
Since you brought up this topic, is there like a specific book or movie that you recently got into that kind of spurred this topic? Or
yeah, there were a few. One is that I got a subscription for like an audiobook thing. So now I'm listening so many audiobooks before my free month is over. As you do, because I'm cheap.
I see that this is clearly not sponsored by whatever company this is that you've got the free trial for.
I mean, they all got free trials. I don't really care what company it is. I just wanted to listen to an audiobook and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I was like, oh, damn, I guess I'll pay for it. It, quote unquote. And on there, I listened to two interesting things. One is the children's book series that I have reread like way too often now, but I didn't with the audiobook. I've been trying like listening to audiobooks as a sort of sleep timer. Works wonders. Pretty good. But this is a book series called, in English, Ranger's Apprentice. And it's for like, I guess, younger high schooler kind of age. And it's basically a sort of traditional medieval story where two friends, one is a very traditional talented but young knight who's sort of making his way through the world, and the other one is a ranger's apprentice, a ranger, which is a sort of spy diplomat kind of thing, and it's very cool. So I just love to read about it and be like, ooh, medieval times, ooh. And in this part that I listened to recently, there was a lot of sort of like literal description of a battle on a field, like right before the big city, a sort of attempt at an invasion, an attempt at sort of overtaking the current leadership of that city. So it was a very tactical battle warfare based storytelling.
Sure.
And I was surprised at how fun it was to read. Like, of course, we're talking about war and stuff, but it was very like group based. It was very, well, chess like, if you will. And I was sort of forgetting a little bit how interesting it is to read something that's so tactical and strategical almost.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first thing that sort of sparked this in my mind. And then the other thing is that I started the book Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, which I've been wanting to read forever because everyone keeps telling me it's a great book.
Mm-hmm.
And it is. So far I've been in it now. It's nonfiction. And he mentioned something that I found very interesting, which is that the fact that mankind is able to make up stories or is able to sort of facilitate or create fictional things, and we're talking both, stories around the campfire and like something like politics, like nations. Nations is not, it exists because we want it to exist and because we created a very complex structure by which we base our lives on. So the sort of communal faith or the sort of shared motivation for something like having a nation or being proud of where you come from, or, in a religion kind of way, or in a war kind of way where you're like, we're fighting for the good because we believe that our side is the best side.
Mm-hmm.
And something like that is able to unite people in ways that other, for instance, animal kingdoms or species are not able to collaborate like that. And that's where the perspective shifts, where suddenly, even though we find it hard to even see the grand scale of this because we are humans, the fact that we have a sort of common motivator or a sort of we're fighting for the good of the whatever, for the good of the people or the good of the nation or the, fill in the blank, makes us able to execute orders because we can believe in this greater, higher thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to see the full picture in order to, stab this guy right in front of me from the enemy, right? And I thought that was very fascinating because it comes back in so many ways, including warfare or, nationalistic ideas or the desire of like creating a nation like that or having a sort of shared culture, even if, I won't go into like super deep because it's pretty dense, right? I found that idea so fascinating and it very much applies to war stories.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final one, and I guess that comes into a little bit of a different discussion maybe, but was the Candela Obscura TTRPG that I watched from Critical Role, the second season, I guess is the word, or edition. Mm-hmm. The one we know and love him, Brennan Lee Mulligan was in here, and he played, I guess, little spoilers if you want to watch it. It's really good, so please go watch it anyway.
It's on my to-do list.
But I'll spoil a teeny bit. I won't go too far. But his character that he plays, or actually all the characters that are being played around the table, are dealing with the sort of aftermath of a war that happened a few years ago. And Brennan's character has some sort of PTSD, is trying to sort of deal with the mental side of it or the mental impact of having been a soldier at war.
Right.
And there's a few moments in there that were so, to try to keep it spoiler-free, that were so expertly crafted and made me feel so personally intrigued into like the single character that I was watching, but also sort of hit with the idea of, oh God, something so giant, so large scale can sort of have an effect on a single person that derails a life, right? And that's crazy to me. In this case, a bad way, but yeah, if we're talking storytelling wise, it was a great story. I really loved it. So there's a lot of places you can go with this kind of genre, I guess, or this complexity of storytelling. Yeah.
I think war as a concept is so intriguing in any form of media, specifically because it's life-changing, right? The impact is massive. It changes people, it changes places, it changes cultures. Yeah. Like it distorts and moves the trajectory of history. It's a huge, huge thing. And it affects everybody in different ways. I think we can't talk about war without mentioning how it's a moral quandary at concept, right? If people intend to be peaceful, if people intend to live life without conflict, war is conflict. It's defined by the conflict, right? And it's a question of morality. It's a question of what are you willing to do to protect what you value, right? How will you challenge and compromise your own beliefs, yourself, your sense of person, in order to keep or gain what you're looking for? And it's a question of greater good. It's a question of consequences and the corruption of heart to be involved in this sort of thing. And so many war stories don't take place during the war. They take place after. because how a character has been changed is the most
trying to pick up the rubble.
Is the most convicting part of the story. It's this, what have they sacrificed? What have they lost? Are they a shell of who they used to be? Are they greater? Are they lesser? The change of a person during war and after war is often the most intriguing bit. It's a wild thing. And the fact that it's happened so many times in our own lives, in our own personal timeline of the world, it becomes intensely relatable to the reader of like, how bad could this be? It could feel disconnected. It could feel far away. But for some people, it is very, very close. And I feel like that's why the idea of war is so powerful.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And it's also like, if we're thinking about this maybe as a final note, in a character motivator kind of way, right? Because so far we've been talking about pretty grand stuff logically, but it's also interesting to see or view warfare or, the expansion of a nation or all that stuff. It's very much a power-based thing, right? And it's one of, I guess, fewer big public, allowed kind of mechanics that can give a single character much more power because they are partaking in it. And in this way, like leadership within a warlike structure or within a conflict like that brings a lot of moral questions because it is so related to power, right? And because power is such a strong motivator for any kind of leader. Not always, but it is the case that all leaders have power. That's kind of what it means to be a leader in a way. The hierarchy within that is very, well, I guess, dangerous, right? In both a terrifying and a storytelling, intriguing kind of way. So I think in any kind of war story, this sort of need for power is something that you at least need to think about, right? Like, what role does it play within this type of war that I'm writing, or this type of conflict that's happening here? And what players are there because of the power, and what players are there because of something else? Yeah. That's a final note that I thought about. But yeah, I feel like we can go forever on this. I didn't honestly realize this was going to be so big, but it's also kind of obvious.
It is kind of
literal war that we're talking about. Maybe I was naive.
It's
I don't
only
know.
one of the biggest concepts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I
did want to mention, if someone's looking for a story that handles like kind of the microcosm of the effect of war on people, if you're looking for a sad time, you can watch The Grave of the Fireflies. It is it's a sad story.
It is a sad time.
That takes
place. It's a good sad time.
Yeah, it characterizes two young kids during wartime. And if you're not looking for like the gun-toting,
it's a movie.
hoo-ha type of hoorah. I'm sorry, not hoo-ha, hoorah type of war stories. Grave of the Fireflies really drives it home about how destructive this sort of kind of thing can be. But yeah, cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Good topic.
It's true.
Good topic.
As a refresher, every episode we end with a little prompt to sort of warm up our improv muscles, so to say. Whoever brings a topic brings a prompt, which is me in this case. And we're just going to riff off and we'll see where we end up.
Sure.
And the prompt for this week is one that I thought about because of one more very good war movie that I saw a few years ago with my dad in the cinema in my hometown. And afterwards we came out and it was pouring rain and we were both shook with the movie and it was a very cool moment. Yeah. It was like the world is crying with us. Anyway, but this is the movie 1917. And it's basically a story of two guys, just sort of relatively humble, unknown sort of footfolk soldiers that are partaking in this. I think it's the First World War, if I remember correctly. It feels a little bit like a sort of odyssey, almost like they're at some point they get a special mission and they need to traverse the fields, the whole sort of no man's land, I should say, of the sort of in-between area of the war.
Right.
Et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. It's a very good movie and it's very beautifully filmed and very sort of empty in a way that not a lot of war stories are. And one specific feature of this film is that it's a single shot, or, quote unquote, single shot. Everything feels like it's a single, one entirely long take, basically.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, it's very, very impressive as well. And that's also kind of what it's famous for a little bit. And where that particularly shined was where there was one take where we saw one of our main characters run through a field as shots were fired and things were exploded. We saw a sort of bird's eye view of the field as he was desperately sort of trying to make his way. We barely heard anything. It was full of music. You know, you can sort of feel the swell of this moment, right? So for the prompt, I wanted to tap into that a little bit. And I would love if you could narrate for me a passage during some kind of war, some kind of conflict or battlefield where we feel the slow motion kick in and something changes the battlefield, let's say.
Interesting.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah. I think for this episode, I'm going to draw inspiration from a series that I recently started. I'm really late to starting things. I'm realizing a lot of these series I'm starting like years after, like Dune. I'm pretty sure that's really old, but I'm just jumping into that. This one is called The Magnus Archives. The Magnus Archives are like a podcast series of anthology stories of just horror situations. And this one kind of pulls of the experiences of a soldier from war. So this is not entirely me. This is kind of just a picture of what's resounding in my head.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's start here. They say that every sense is heightened in the absence of others. And I noticed it most clearly when everything went silent. It was deafening at first, the sound of an exploding mortar to my wayside. And as I saw bits and pieces of my conscript fly past my periphery, I realized that I wouldn't have time to process this loss for at least another hour. In the absence of sound, your mind tries to catch up by filling in the blanks. Just above the filmy surface of a ringing, persistent layer, I heard the sound of the sizzling of oil on pan, a breakfast that I remember from the last day I saw my family. I could hear the sound of a piper's flute, rallying all of our brotherhood to motion on this battlefield. I wonder where that instrument is now. In the absence of places I can stand, as more and more of the landscape is obliterated by artillery, I find the gaps in my path filling with the sound of rushing waters, like a river I can't see. It reminds me of where I wish I was, of an ocean washing over my face and deafening the concerns I've carried for these past few months. To be submerged and lost in a world that does not care who I side with. I can't hear my footfalls. I don't know how far I've traveled. My mind reminds me there's somewhere I have to be. There's a finish line, but I won't be greeted with the cheers of applause. Won't be met with a gold medal. What I'll find at the end are bodies whose voices have clearly been lost for me to arrive here. And I don't know if I can call that a victory. So instead, just above the crackle of white noise, I'll think of the snapping of wood in the bonfire that carries the dinner that will hopefully allow me to sleep. Because I can't spend too long thinking of all the sounds that I'll never hear again. And that's it. That's the prompt.
Oh, dang. You got the vibe right, my friend. Oh, God. Yeah, that's dang. Dang. So just I forget how good you are.
Thanks. Wow.
So
okay.
annoying.
Wow. It's so talented. Wow.
Thanks.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah, it's so talented.
As I was getting into
yeah, that's
it,
great. I mean,
I'm like,
that's exactly what it is. This is that kind of a scene. Yeah, man.
I felt
That's beautiful. God.
I felt myself being shunted back like a decade where I used to do like spoken word stuff. And I'm like, ooh, pulling from my roots. Let me just grab that.
It feels like that. Yeah. You got the pauses in there.
Yeah. I got that good word, right? That one good word. I see it.
That one.
There it is. There it is. Okay. Yeah.
Well done.
Thank
wow.
you.
That was great. Amazing. And as we recover from this dark and gloomy
Oh yeah,
topic.
just a good start to my Tuesday morning. The usual.
I know. It had to happen at some point. It's too big to ignore. We can't not do an episode about war. I don't think we can.
Fair.
So, we did it. I'm proud of us.
All right.
We tackled it.
Close us out.
And as we shake off the gloomy feel.
Is it raining?
There's one thing
outside. No, it's good. It's good weather. It's good weather. Sorry, go ahead.
It's starting to rain here, so it's probably time to quit. Anyway, thanks so much for listening, everyone. As usual, you probably know it by now, but if you want to reach us, we have a Twitter. Somehow we still have it. I guess we still see it. But if you want to make sure we see everything, email us at yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. We will see it. We love to hear from you. And thanks for listening. And always remember, there's this one thing that's good to keep in mind, which is that your rivers are wrong.
Yep. Your rivers are wrong.
So
always have been.
Yeah.
Always will be. Goodbye.
The end. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Your Rivers Are Wrong. If you have any thoughts for topics, prompts, or if you just want to share your thoughts, you can reach us at yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. That's yourriversarewrong@gmail.com. Big thank you goes to Martin Skelligans for our intro and outro music. And most importantly, thank you for listening. We hope to catch you at our next episode. Have a good one.